The xamMenu control allows you to incorporate a well-known and proven menuing system that you may have seen in many applications out there for many years. And in this particular example, you see that the menu is oriented horizontally and is placed against the top of the user interface within this user controls context. Notice that the menu items are hierarchical in nature if you choose to define them this way. And you can define menu items in XAML, or you can actually define them within an observable collection or an iList or an IEnumerable that is placed within your view model and bind it to the data context of the menu. So if I were to scroll down just to show you a quick view of how these items are defined, notice how this is where the xamMenu is instantiated, and the menu orientation property is set to horizontal, which I could also show you an example of what it looks like when it's set to vertical, where you could have it going up and down in a vertically oriented position. Then we start off with top level menu items here, and notice how we're nesting menu items within the parent menu items. And that's pretty much the nature of this control. It's hierarchical, and each item can have an ID, so that way you can handle some events, like you can handle a click event, which then you could test the ID of the item that was clicked, and then you could perform some action on that. And here's an example of events where, for example, if I click on a file open directly and a dialog box is launched, but the example just shows you some code where you have the various menu items defined in here. And if we look at the code behind, and this is not an MVVM example, but you can adjust this code so that it does work with, say if you wanted to do it more declaratively. And what we'll do is, if we take a look at the item clicked event of this menu control, you could pretty much use the, you could obtain the menu items here. As you see, what we're doing is we're getting the item header through the event arguments, and then just test whatever the ID is, and then take whatever action you wish. Again, you could forward this on to a class dedicated for executing logic and not putting this logic in the click event handler directly. You want to offload it to another class, or if you want to do this, move this over and then declaratively hook it up, you can do that as well. Whereas just a quick, very simple example just to give you an idea of how you handle events and how you invoke certain actions depending on what menu item you clicked. And now if I go into the vertical menu just to show you, this is what it looks like with the menu orientation set to vertical. You can also have a vertical menu against the side, either side, whatever you like, of the screen to give that type of interaction. You could also include checks in this too. So here in this particular example, we included checkboxes in these child items underneath country and product type. You could check them off. The other thing that you can do with the menu is there's a property that you can enable expand on hover, and when I enable that, just when I hover my mouse over the menu items automatically expand without me clicking. So this could be something that you may want to add to enhance your user experience with the menu. And here's another example where the boundary is detected automatically. So whenever I click and just keep expanding, it notices that the menu is smart enough to notice that it can't show a child panel or a child pop-up item if it gets cut off. So it's intelligent enough to kind of pop them up in areas where it will be within view. So this actually is a user control whose boundaries are within the scope of this area where I'm moving my mouse. As I mouse over this news item 3, it can't render this pop-up without cutting it off unless it moves it over to the other side of the menu, and then it starts all over again. So that's how this works with boundary detection. And again, this is kind of an example of a menuing system that is very deep and would not be typical in any application that has good practices implemented with menuing systems. It's just really nested too deep. But just to show you that if there are boundaries, it detects them and it pops up the child items accordingly. The NetAdvantage Silverlight line of business control set contains a family of controls known as xamSlider. So there's different types of xamSlider controls. We have xamNumeric slider, which allows you to select and display a single value along a track bar with one thumb. Then we have xamNumeric range slider, which allows you to have multiple thumbs within the track bar, so you could pretty much set ranges and have multiple points within the track bar. And then the same thing for date time values. We have a single xam date time slider where you select and display one date time value within the slider track bar and one thumb only. Then you have a xam date time range slider, which is a range of dates with multiple thumbs within the track bar. So let's take a look at the xam date time slider. So in this example, we have the single instance of this control, and notice how it's data bound to the calendar control next to it. So as I click on the calendar, because it's data bound, it's within the realm of its min and max values. So you can use this as a data entry control or display control to show what value is from your back end or whatever data model that you have bound to the UI. And then we have range slider here. In this particular example, we're using the range numeric slider so that we can define gradients. And again, it could be any kind of values that you want to display within this control. And here we're setting stop points for the gradients. In this other example, we have regular numeric sliders oriented horizontally and vertically, and we're just binding it to this image so that we're setting its projection according to whatever value the slider has been moved to. Another important part of this control is the way the thumbs themselves behave. Now the thumb refers to this point here on the track bar. So there's different behaviors. We have free, push, and lock. So this particular thumb's behavior is set so that it's free, meaning that any other thumb can go over it and above and beyond it. And so essentially this thumb is free to just sit there and not interfere with, or not get pushed around by other thumbs as I move them around. Now the second one is set to push. So in other words, when another thumb goes up to it, it gets pushed around. So see how the blue one is pushing the green one, and now the red one is pushing the green one. So it's going to get pushed around. That's what that means. However, the blue one is set to lock. So no matter what other thumbs do, the blue one is locked in position. So it's fixed and pinned down. So once I get to that point, I can't push it away. And I can't do the same thing with this one here. So that's essentially how it works. And this is very valuable if you have a situation where you have min value and a max value, and you don't want to, overlap or kind of flip the values over, because you're always going to be looking at this thumb for a value and you expect it to be lower than this thumb here, which should be higher. That's where these behaviors work together to give you that foolproof data entry point. Otherwise you're going to have to write some logic to test if the values have been transversed or flipped over. So there's many different use cases for this control. The other thing that you can have is tooltip support. So for example here, as I move the slider and the thumb, I get a tooltip. And here's another example of range selection. And again, this is perfect for situations like you want to create a range of items that could be used in many situations, such as a filter. Give it a value, such as the difference from this point to that point could be just one value if you like. So there's many different applications that this could be used for.
Infragistics. On the web at infragistics.com.